Really working. I am doing this from my computer and not from my phone. So my phone's like 3 years old. It's on its last leg, and um, yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna check this to see if I'm actually. Oh, hello, Meryl. Maybe it is actually working. Good to know. All right, does look like we are live. Hmm. So, all right. I am here to just share a little bit about my story, waking up to my cyclical nature, my womb wisdom, and acknowledging here in the moment, I'm feeling a little bit nervous because there are some vulnerable, vulnerable things in my story. Hello, Erica. Welcome. Um, yeah, and trigger warning for anybody that is, watching this now or watching it on the replay. There probably will be a mention of sexual harassment because it's a pivotal turning point in my story. So if you don't have the capacity to hear that, then you can um, yeah, then you can come back whenever you do have more capacity. Oh, hi Meryl. Yeah, yeah, I saw you there. Welcome. Oh, yay. I'm glad that a couple of you could join me live. Yeah, and I'm hoping to keep this kind of short. Realizing that I still try to do things in linear ways a lot of times. So I tried to like write out the story in nice like point A to point B to C. And it just didn't work out that way because life is not linear, as I'm sure most of us know. So I do have some notes here on the side that I'll reference, but it's probably not going to be a linear story. It'll be a bit cyclical in nature, which yeah, is just quite beautiful as it is, right? So just to start with, I am cycle day 10 today. So I'm feeling all right with being here and being vulnerable and in my inner spring. And yeah, feeling a bit tender though as well. And realizing that I don't have as much, I'm not feeling my full strength and power like I do in my summer. So that's where I'm at, coming to you with my energy that's coming through today. So I think just like I don't want to spend much time on like the very early beginning parts of my story, but I will just share that I got my first period when I was 13, and I got it at school and didn't tell anybody in school. I just wrapped up some toilet paper and put it in, my underwear, went through the rest of the day, and then I went home and got the box of tampons that my mom had in the bathroom and just read the instructions and put one in. Didn't tell my mother, didn't tell anybody, not one single person that I tell. And the only time my mother then talked to me about it is when she noticed that some of her, supplies were going missing. And so she just asked, do you need me to buy you do you need me to buy you supplies the next time I go to the store? And I said, yep. And that was the end of our conversation. So, early on, I didn't have really anybody to talk to about this, this new way my body was moving and flowing in this cyclical nature. And the first year of having periods, bleeding, it was really, really tough. I was fainting, I was vomiting, the pain was, like 12 out of 10. It was really, really rough. And so then about a year after that, we went to the doctor and I was put on birth control at the age of 14. So, that, I was on birth control for about 14 years then, from that time. So that's one piece of the thread. The other piece of the thread is that I grew up in a pretty conservative Christian household. And when I went off to college, I got in with a community of people that was, yeah, very, very conservative Christians, and yeah, and this idea that body, was a source of sin, and that I shouldn't be, very connected to my body. I should be connecting with God, and this God that was somewhere out there that wasn't, attainable to reach. And so that was a piece of my story growing up. And also this piece, like I've been a dancer my whole entire life as well. So there was this tension between dancing and this tension between my religion. And what I was realizing though, as I was reflecting, yes. Oh, Erica, great. I'm glad that makes sense. So what I was realizing was though that my dancing in my earlier years was not for me at all. I was not using it as a connection to my own body. I was using it as a way to perform, as a way to be consumed for other people. We were always just preparing for our next performance. So that, our bodies could be consumed by the audience. And so, very, disconnected from my body from, very early age. And so then what happened, there's lots in the middle part of that story, but because I was this conservative Christian and was very connected to a group of people from the Baptist church and very focused on mission work. And that's where my next path led. And so I, yeah, decided to leave the United States to move to India and be a missionary. And it feels a little bit strange to say that now, but if you want to hear more of that story, I have a podcast from Christian missionary to pagan womb witch. If you want to hear more of the that progression that happened. Um, but what happened was I arrived then here in Kolkata in the slums. So I moved into a slum Kolkata, a slum community here in Kolkata, and um, realizing that like there is so much suffering in the world. And I started having all of these questions, like how could I believe in this, God that I had been shown, that's supposed to know all the plans, that is supposed to, be all good, and then arrive in this place where people were suffering beyond anything that I had ever known or experienced up into that point. And so all of these questions coming, connected with living in this linear nature, being on birth control, not understanding that my body was cyclical, and being in, this linear framework that was telling me that I had to keep going, going, going at all times and pushing my body. And because I was also given a white savior complex from my religion, and I felt like all of the needs of the community were on my shoulders, and that I needed to, keep pushing myself in all ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like it was just a full force going forward, trying to meet the needs of everybody around me, and completely missing that my own body was breaking down, and that I was not meeting the needs of myself. And so that all came crashing down around 2012, the end of 2012, beginning of 2013. Um, and a number of things happened all within like a very short time frame, just a few months. And one of them being was I started getting really sick physically. And I thought, oh, it's just parasites from living in India, it's giardia, like all these different things I was justifying. And it took 2 years for them to diagnose me with celiac disease that had, this autoimmunity manifested from all of the stress that I had been putting my body through. And so that's one piece that began this crashing down. Because with my celiac, then I was just fatigued all of the time. And I started getting lots of brain fog, signs of depression because I wasn't receiving the nutrients that my body needed. So that's one piece that was happening. The next piece that was happening, just like reading through my notes. The next piece was happening that I was in a dance movement therapy training. So I was training to be a dance movement therapist and not realizing that going through that training was actually going to bring up a lot of my own past traumas and shadows that were living in my body. And so I was, working with that, at the same time. And then the third piece, and this is the piece of the sexual harassment. So if you need to, um, resource yourself before you hear, this is the trigger warning. Um, so I was riding my bike one day down the street, and there was a man riding his bike beside me, and I had stopped to answer a phone call, and the guy stopped beside me as I stopped beside me, and this was not the first time, that I had gotten, unwanted attention from men being here in India. And so I didn't think it was that strange and just kind of like letting it go. Um, oh, hello, Louise. Welcome. So yeah, I was sitting there. I decided then the phone call was finished and I got back on my bike, started riding, and of course this guy got back on his bike and started riding beside me. And as we were in the middle of the road, he yelled over to me to look at him. And so I turned my head to look, and he had pulled his pants down and exposed himself to me right in the middle of the street. And I, freaked out. I started yelling at him, and then I tried to get away from him as fast as I could on my bike. Luckily, I did manage to, get away from him by going through all these different lanes and things. But, my body had a very visceral reaction to this. And I remember at this point, I'm still, in the framework of being a Christian at this moment, and I remember that I could not pray at this time. And I had a meeting with one of my mentors, my spiritual mentors, and as we were talking, she mentioned to me that she found it interesting I couldn't pray because I was using male pronouns for God all of the time during our conversations. And that was something that did not even register for me at all. I had no idea that I was only using male pronouns for God and that actually my image of God was male at that point. And so that was sort of like this pivotal moment in my story when I realized that um, everything I had been taught and the story that I had built my life on up until that point was built on God being male and this other layer of God being, off in the heavens, very far and distant away from me and my body. And so realizing this, coming into this place of, darkness where I didn't really understand anything anymore. experiencing compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, as well as my own trauma of being, coming here to this culture and just being immersed in so much suffering around me. And with that savior complex, thinking that I, was here to help everybody and all of their burdens were mine as well. All of that combined together with this spiritual burnout, right? Where, everything I believed, I could no longer believe anymore. And then this, existential what I call existential burnout, because it was like the foundation had cracked underneath me. And um, yeah, like everything that my identity was based on up until that point, I could no longer hold on to anymore. And realizing all of these social and cultural conditionings that I had through, through my life up until that point, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I just felt completely lost. And so that started a period of 2 years, which I call, the dark 2 years that I had. And it just felt really, really numb. I couldn't like connect to anything. I continued to look outside of myself for answers because that's where they came from before. I didn't know where else to look. So I was looking everywhere for answers, but it was making things worse. It was making me feel worse. I thought I was an atheist for a while, and I thought like there's no divine, there's nothing, waiting for me at the end. There is nothing here to make life, beautiful, and just was very disconnected. Um, and then through all of this, one piece that was really critical was having a community. And that's one piece that was there from the moment I arrived in India, that there was this group of people that we were intentionally doing this work together. And we had, weekly meetings, we had times of intentionally being together and sharing with each other. And a lot of them had already been questioning things. We were all coming from a Christian background, but some of them had begun questioning, what does this all mean? How can we believe in this God with all of these things that we're experiencing here in this new culture? And so I felt safe to be vulnerable in that space and really bring all of these things I was questioning myself and how I could experience these, still connecting to life, but not really finding those places that I felt like had meaning and purpose. And so that's one critical piece that sort of held me together. I can't imagine what it would have been like to experience all of that on my own as well. I'm not sure I would have, actually not sure I would have made it through at that point. Yeah, so like through this, I still felt there's still some connection with something spiritual. There's something divine, but I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know where to find it. I didn't know how to go about figuring out what a spirituality looked like at that point. And then, luckily, I had a friend mention to me a silent retreat that they had been on. And oh, thank you, Louise. Thank you for listening. Yeah. So you mentioned this silent retreat, and I thought, oh, maybe that is one thing I can do. One thing I can connect with is silence, because, guess you don't have to do much to just be silent, not realizing that it's actually a lot harder than it sounded to begin with. But I decided to, okay, let's try it. I'm gonna sign up for this silent retreat and I'm just gonna see what happens in the silence. Didn't really expect much of anything. If anything, I expected, the Christian God that I had believed in for so long to miraculously appear in that space of my silence, and that did not happen, obviously. I wouldn't be here today if that did happen. But so it wasn't in my first retreat that I went to, but it was like it was a stepping stone that I continued to walk on, and I continued to go on these retreats and just be in silence for sometimes 3 days, sometimes 5 days. The longest I've been silent is 8 days. But just this process of being silent, and when I stopped looking outside of myself for answers, when I got quiet, I realized that they were all within me. Like in this body I have been given, there are the answers that I have been seeking, that I have been looking for. And through this process, realizing that that wisdom was coming from my womb, was coming from this this body that is embodied in a cyclical way, in a cyclical nature. And so what came out of that was really I stopped birth control after 14 years on birth control. I decided to because I saw this body now as this divine, this divine essence within me. I could no longer feel comfortable taking the birth control pill. And I could no longer, I started getting clearing myself of all of these toxic chemicals. So I stopped taking, medicine when I didn't need it because I was popping those pills for my period pain all the time. I stopped doing that. And my period pain came back with a vengeance right after I got off the birth control. And so that was this initiation process then again through the pain, and the pain being my teacher, and realizing this beautiful body I have been given, and how it can teach me to become closer with myself and closer with those around me, through that pain and that process, and really listening. Oh, what do you need? Listening to my body, really asking it what it needs, and responding to that as well, which then awoken my intuition as well. When I started to actually trust that my body was telling me things that it was really desiring, it was really needing, that would guide me closer to to a truer alignment with who I really am. And yeah, let's see what else I wanted to mention. Yeah, so then after that sort of like awakening, and it was a slow process to awakening to my cyclical nature then. And a few things that happened alongside that was I had a friend send me an article about menstrual cups being distributed in Nepal. And I had loved cups. I started using cups when I was in college and loved, sustainable products. And so I started talking to people in my community, the slum community I was living in, just to understand what they were doing about their menstruation, what products they were using, how did they feel? Were they, asking the girls if they were missing school, and how they were experiencing having a period in the community they were in. And out of that, I created a social business. It was called Shimota. And we hired people from the community to sew reusable cloth pads. And then we led menstrual health education workshops for people in communities and distributed these pads to schools and nonprofits and different people in the area. And it was through that process that I myself started using the cloth pads, and I was sort of like the guinea pig in the beginning, making sure that they actually worked. And so every cycle I was, every bleed I was trying out a new pad, and through that process became so much more connected to my blood because I had to actually see it. I had to wash it. And even with the cup, I was disconnected because I could just dump it out, rinse it, put it back in. But with the pad that I had to hand wash because we don't have, I didn't have a washing machine at that point. So I had to hand wash it and, watch the blood flow from the pad. And there was just this deep connection that I was growing with my womb and with my blood at that time. And it was through Shimota that actually I found out about the Red School through a person that had been connected in Shimota sent me an email, and there was a link to the Red School in that email, which then started me on this menstrual cycle awareness piece. And so already feeling called from my body. And then it was like that landed in me, into my mental landscape and my spiritual landscape then with the awareness piece. Um, Still have to hand wash mine before machine wash anyway. Yeah, so I still do as well. I rinse my pads out until they're clean, and then I till the water runs clean, and then I put them in the washing machine. But yeah, and it can be a meditative practice as well, washing your cloth pads. If you haven't tried that before, I recommend that as a practice. Um, yeah, and then I started doing silent retreats on my bleed time. So about every 2 months, I would go to this place where I was doing my silent retreats, and I would bleed in the silence. And it was a really beautiful time of learning more of that spiritual connection with my cyclical nature and taking the time to really rest and prioritize my need for rest and need for tuning inward to my soul during that time. Um, yeah, and I see it as like this softly and gently coming back home to myself. That's how I see my journey. For, all of the beginning years, very disconnected and always looking for everything outside of myself, into this coming home to myself and realizing that my body holds the answers and I can live a sustainable and even a thriving life if I align my life to my cycle and take that time out when I need it to prioritize my own needs, my own rest, and then be able to give from that place to others. The times that I have the energy to give and support and help others heal in their own journeys. And so that's been like a beautiful, yeah, just a beautiful coming home to this natural rhythm I have been given in this body. And, each cycle just learning more and more and continuing that process of coming home more and more to who I was created to be. And so that's just been a beautiful, beautiful journey. So just one of the, yes, Louise, yes, softly and gently coming home to self. Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to share this here is because I want this story to be woven through my work. And I realized that when I started doing this work with menstrual cycle awareness, with helping support people connect to their cycles, that um, I was a little bit lost on why I was doing it. It was sort of like I knew my embodied knowing was knowing why it was doing it. Sort of my head was a little late to catch up. And like, why am I doing this? Like what really, like where really is my passion, my core calling, right? And so through some work I've done and through the menstruality leadership program that I went through with the Red School last year, uncovering and unearthing a little bit more of my calling to be here in this space and to share this work, and realizing that I want it to be very rooted and based in my story and the transformation and the process that I went through. And so moving forward, that's really where I'm going to be focusing on. At a time I did my yoga teacher training and thought I would do that, and that just didn't connect to a part of my story. I thought I would do fertility awareness education, and that just didn't fit into a piece of my story. And so, as I'm becoming really clear on the pieces of my story that are the most important to move forward with, like I'm really excited about where this work is going to be leading in the way that it can support people in a very unique, in a very unique nature that might not be available in other places. So something I like to say about my work now is it's always moving from a desire to be cyclically centered, trauma informed, somatic based, and spiritually present. And so those are the things that I want to be woven through every single offering, every single thing that I show up for and give from, myself. Those are the threads that I'm pulling through. And it's really about like supporting cyclical beings to recover from and prevent burnout and stress and trauma. And it's that awakening to the magic of our cycle, to the magic of being a cyclical being, and really coming from an understanding that the answers are within. The answers are within our body, and I want to honor that in you, just as I found it in me. So every person that I, work with or that comes into my work, that is the honoring that I desire, is to honor that you have the answers you need within you. You don't need me to tell you the answers. I can give you some frameworks, I can give you some archetypes, I can give you some things to explore and ways in to discover, but always with that desire to discover what is within you. Because what works for you is not going to work for me. What works for me is not going to work for you. And so, coming from that desire always that you have the power to understand and unearth your own magic from within you. Hmm. Oh, Meryl, thank you. Um, Thank you. Yeah. Calling me goddess and I'm infectious. Oh, that's so lovely to hear. And something I'm learning more and more. I'm just now learning about my human design, which I don't know if you all know your human design. I'd love to hear if you do know about it, but I'm a projector. And so, yeah, being recognized for who I am is really it's really touches me. It really hits me in the core, and invites me to show up more and to be here more, to support more people. So, thank you for that. Thank you, Erica. Yeah, thank you all for just being here. Um, and yeah, and so like this piece then that helping people prevent and recover from these things of burnout, stress, and trauma, and breaking free of this story that we have been told, this story that we need to live in this linear framework, that we need to live along the ideas of capitalist productivity and with our savior complexes that, everything in the world, we have to be everything to everyone at all the time, like that lie that we are constantly told. Really here to speak against that and to speak, to be the countercultural voice, to really claim our right to rest and claim our right to be cyclical and to not show up in linear ways and just to show up authentically for who we are and speaking and coming from that core of ourselves, which is what I am, trying to do at all points. And yeah, which is what I'm feeling like invited to do more lives and to share more authentically in this. And something I'm doing to sort of break my own conditioning of being in this capitalist society that tells me I need to present things neatly in a box or else people won't understand me. And I call bullshit. That is some capitalist bullshit because I trust that you all have the capacity to understand what I'm talking about, even when I'm talking cyclically, around and around, and just allowing what comes through to come through, and knowing that that is meant for somebody. Somebody who is listening is meant to hear that, and just really trusting in that, yeah, trusting in that truth that we don't have to be nice and neat and tidy and walk from A to B all the time, just to, just to do our work and be in the world. So, and the last piece, the only last piece I wanted to say was just like knowing how important community was in my own story is why I feel so passionate about building community around these things because it's not easy. It's not easy being a cyclical being in this world we are in today. And we really need each other to support these practices, support this lifestyle that we are trying to implement, support our need for rest and our need to take care of ourselves. And I am here to support that in all of you. And I am here to build that community so that we can all support each other in that, to discover that magic in our menstrual cycle, discover our healing and how we can come home to ourselves. Oh, And that's the end of my notes. Uh, yeah. And yeah, I'm just honoring and trusting that whatever was meant to be heard has been heard for whoever will be listening to this. Either those of you that have been here live, thank you for staying around and listening. And for those that are watching the replay, and really also stating this as a state of accountability so that I can stay accountable to this calling that I have and to continue this work, to creating this space for all of you. Hmm. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, lovely. And I thought about before I did this, like, oh, I should like tell them something like to invite them deeper in the end, like something to sell or whatever. And I'm calling capitalist bullshit on that too. That we always need to sort of tell our stories to call people in because we need to sell something. And so that, yeah, I want to stop doing that. I want to stop feeling the need like I have to constantly be on this selling mode just to make it in this work. I'm just going to let it go organically from here. I'm going to try and share from my heart and yeah, just trust that the people that need what I am offering will find me in their own timing, find me in their way. Ah, yeah. All right. Beautiful people. I'm so glad you've come. I'm just gonna wrap it up unless there's any questions. Any of you have any questions? I'd be really interested to hear about your celiac diagnosis. I might have to message you separately. Yeah, I welcome any messages. You can send me a DM. If you're in our community on Mighty Networks, you can message me there. I'm there often as well. Um, yeah, I have a lot more understanding now the connection between birth control, autoimmune disease, stress and trauma. So I'll be bringing that story a little bit deeper in the future, probably. Thanks for asking that, Meryl. All right, I'm going to sign off now. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your Saturday, or if you're watching the replay, the rest of your day, and connect with you all later.